Perhaps the most infamous house, after House Hoare to call Harrenhal their seat, House Lothston's history intertwines with the heights of power, the favor of monarchy, and the depths of depravity alike. Known far and wide by their sigil, a black bat on a field of white and gold, House Lothston first appears in the available histories during Maegor the Cruel's trial by 7. Archmaester Gildane writes, in Fire and Blood, that Sir Guy Lothston was present at Visinya's Hill when King Maegor was met with a challenge by the Grand Captain of the Warrior's Sons. Though it is said that Sir Guy initially kept quiet when Maegor called for warriors to stand beside him, the words and willingness of others eventually moved the Knight of Lothston to champion the king. Sadly, Sir Guy was not to survive the fight, and he was slain alongside 13 of the 14 participants of the trial. The Lothstons saw their next brush with the power and strife of House Targaryen, as well as their next major appearance in the Chronicles, with the secret siege of 135 AC. In the resulting fallout of the internal power struggle, Lucas Lothston, the unlikely son of a hedge knight, was named Master of Arms at the Red Keep. It is said that Lucas was a fine swordsman as well as a patient teacher. This reputation served him quite well as he found the favor of both Prince Viserys and King Aegon III. And it was partly this royal favor that would ultimately lead Lucas Lothston to be named Lord of the Great Castle of Harrenhal. Lucas's ascent to the lordship of Harrenhal is quite the tale within itself, and doubly intertwined with that of Aegon IV. After a young Prince Aegon was caught abed with the Lady Flaena Stokeworth by a member of the Royal Kingsguard, his father King Viserys arranged for Lady Flaena to marry Sir Lucas. In an attempt to put distance between Flaena and the royal court, and to reward Lucas for his service in the arranged marriage, the king gifted him Harrenhal. Flaena soon gave birth to a daughter, Jane, whom it was rumored may have been the child of Prince Aegon himself and not Sir Lucas. Though these rumors could never be proven, they hung over Jane Lothston during her entire tenure in King's Landing. What was verifiable, however, was the pox that Aegon IV transmitted to Jane, which proved to be a convenient cover to dismiss not only her as mistress, but all Lothstons from court, including Lucas Lothston, who had until recently enjoyed a deal of royal favor as the hand of the king. Approaching the end of their tenure in the halls of power, the Lothstons had already begun to garner a bad name for themselves. Though the chronicling is vague, figures such as Manfred Lothston, the son of Lord Lucas Lothston, known as Manfred of the Black Hood, are not remembered fondly, being associated with black deeds and ill repute. In the case of Manfred Lothston, who played both sides in the First Blackfyre Rebellion, the reputation of duplicitousness was perhaps not undeserved. The Lothstons were able to maintain a hold on their lands in spite of this growing reputation and actions taken during the Targaryen Civil War, and by the time of the Dunk and Egg series, the Lothstons are still a potent regional power. It is shortly after the Second Blackfyre Rebellion that House Lothston would begin its rapid descent into the annals of history, not just in disgrace, but amid abject horror. By the late 210s, control of House Lothston had fallen to its most infamous member, Denell Lothston, perhaps better known as Mad Denell. Little is actually known about the crimes of Denell Lothston, though they are said to be dark even beyond what most readers have come to expect from A Song of Ice and Fire. Rumors and legends range from Denell drinking and even bathing in the blood of women to the consumption of flesh at feasts. And it is said that she had a fondness particularly for the flesh of children. And if the tales told by parents to misbehaving youths are to be believed, these child victims were abducted by gargantuan bats made to do the bidding of the Mad Lady. These tales may in fact be nothing more than tales. Stark and seemingly intentional parallels exist between the Lady Denell and two prominent nobles in European history, the first being Giles de Reyes, I'm not pronouncing that correctly, who lived during the 1400s. Reyes was a nobleman and knight from Brittany, as well as a leader in the French army and companion of Joan of Arc. He became famous, however, not for his deeds on the battlefield or for the companionship of the famous Joan. De Reyes is best remembered for his alleged crimes and later conviction as a child serial killer. Reyes shared much in common with his female A Song of Ice and Fire counterpart, and it seems likely that Denell's portrayal in a fine-fitting suit of black plate armor draws heavy inspiration from artistic depictions of Rey. Though the weight of vile crimes hangs over the head of Rey, virtually no evidence was ever put forth to prove his guilt. His confession relied on the unreliable legal mechanism of torture, and though efforts were made to recover proof, no remains of victims were ever found. And modern scholars and investigators have postulated more than once that Ray was the victim of a plot to seize his highly coveted lands and titles. Perhaps the legends that surround Denell Lothston are equally as unsubstantiated. Further evidence to suggest this may come from the other key historical parallel that Denell is drawn from, the Countess Elizabeth Barthany. Elizabeth Barthany was a Hungarian noblewoman born in 1650, and she had previously been the template for Denell's dark fantasy counterpart of the year 2000, the Countess of Diablo II. Barthany and her entourage of servants were charged with and convicted of many of the same crimes as Denell has said to have partaken in, with the murders of hundreds of young girls laid at their feet, alongside the accusation of bathing in the blood of virgins to maintain their youth. Again, modern scholars and investigators are less likely to believe these stories than many were at the time, citing again a lack of physical evidence and the use of torture to procure confessions from servants, as well as the allure of power to be gained from the downfall of the noble. Notably, Barthany power was seen as contesting Habsburg power in the region at the time. This begs us all to ask the question, was Denell truly a perpetrator of such crimes? Surely the presence of giant bat skeletons in Bloodraven's cave and the dark nature of George R. R. Martin's writings leaves the door wide open to a mad Denell. However, the nature of the historical parallels leave us with the question of her guilt. No matter the truth, though, the name Lothston currently lives in unrivaled villainy throughout much of the world of Ice and Fire.